Everyone on the ground now. The gunshot echoed through the crystal chandeliers as Sandra's hand instinctively moved toward her concealed weapon before forcing herself to freeze. Stay in character. You're just a waitress. Just a scared girl serving champagne. But everything in her Navy SEAL training screamed against dropping to the marble floor with the other terrified guests. Her eyes tracked the 6 armed figures spreading through the ballroom. Tactical formation, military-grade weapons, coordinated movement. These weren't desperate thieves. These were professionals. I said down. The lead gunman's voice carried a slight accent she couldn't place. Sandra let herself crumple beside an overturned chair, her server's uniform wrinkled, her breathing deliberately rapid and shallow. Around her, billionaires and socialites sobbed into their hands, mascara streaming, designer gowns torn in their panic. Please, take whatever you want, gasped Harrison Blackwood, the evening's host. Even on his knees, the tech mogul's silver hair remained perfectly styled. My personal vault. The access codes are in my study upstairs. The lead gunman smiled. We know exactly where your vault is, Mr. Blackwood. And we know exactly what's inside it. Sandra's blood turned cold. Her mission briefing had been specific. Harrison Blackwood was suspected of harboring stolen military assets. She'd been planted as catering staff to gather intelligence during tonight's charity gala. But intel suggested documents, not whatever required this level of force. You're making a mistake, Blackwood's voice cracked. I'm just a businessman. I develop software. Software. The gunman laughed. Is that what we're calling weaponized bioagents now? The woman next to Sandra, some senator's wife, vomited onto the floor. Sandra maintained her terrified waitress expression while her mind raced. Bioweapons. In a civilian location. With no backup team aware of the escalation. She caught movement in her peripheral vision. A second gunman approached their group, his weapon casually pointed at the huddled guests. Check them for phones, recording devices. Kill anyone who moves wrong. Asterisk 2 minutes until someone dies. Maybe less. Asterisk. Hey, you. The gunman's boot stopped inches from Sandra's face. Server girl. You're awfully quiet. Sandra looked up with wide, terrified eyes she'd perfected during interrogation resistance training. I don't want to die. Please. Smart girl. What's your name? Hannah, she whispered, using her cover identity. Hannah Williams. I'm working my way through community college. I'm not supposed to be here. I was just filling in for my friend who got sick. Hey, my friend, hope you're doing well. Drop a comment and let me know how you're feeling about this story so far and where you are watching from. Some stories are too close to my heart to share on YouTube. I send those, along with little life lessons and surprises, to my email circle. If you'd like to be part of it, you can join with the link in the description. The gunman's expression softened slightly. Lucky you picked the wrong night to make some extra cash. He moved on to terrorize the next guest. Sandra's earpiece, disguised as a simple hearing aid, crackled with static. She'd lost contact with her handler 3 hours ago, right after reporting Blackwood's suspicious meeting with unknown individuals in his private office. That meeting had ended 20 minutes before the robbery began. Not a coincidence. Sir, another gunman called out. We've got the building secured. All exits covered. Local police response time is 8 minutes out. Perfect. Andrew, take position at the main staircase. Elena, watch the service corridors. The rest of you, with me. Mr. Blackwood is going to show us to his private collection. As they hauled Blackwood to his feet, Sandra noticed something that made her blood freeze. The lead gunman's tactical vest bore a small insignia, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. Phoenix Security. A private military contractor that officially didn't exist. She'd run ops against Phoenix teams in Syria. They didn't do freelance robbery. They did targeted asset recovery for clients who preferred plausible deniability. Which meant someone with serious resources wanted whatever was in Blackwood's vault. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Blackwood stumbled as they pushed him toward the grand staircase. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he gasped. Some things are locked away for good reason. We understand perfectly. The gunman's smile was cold. Our employer has very specific instructions about handling Dr. Darlington's little project. Sandra's heart stopped. Dr. Darlington. Her father. The biochemist who'd been developing defensive countermeasures against bioweapons until his research was stolen 3 months ago. The theft that had prompted her current deep cover assignment. The research that had supposedly been recovered and destroyed. But if it was here, in a billionaire's private vault, Move faster, old man, the gunman snarled at Blackwood. We have exactly 4 minutes before Phase 2 of this operation begins. Phase 2. Blackwood's face went white. The part where we test the weapon's effectiveness on a contained population sample. The gunman gestured around the ballroom filled with hostages. Starting with everyone in this room. Sandra closed her eyes and made her choice. 43 innocent people were about to die from her father's stolen research unless she broke her cover and became the weapon she'd been trained to be. But first, she needed to know exactly what they were dealing with. And why Harrison Blackwood, a man she'd been sent to investigate for military asset theft, looked genuinely terrified of what was about to come out of his own vault. The chandelier above her head began to sway as heavy footsteps disappeared up the marble staircase. In exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds, Sandra Williams, the community college waitress, would cease to exist. And Lieutenant Sandra Darlington, Navy SEAL, would have to decide how many people she was willing to kill to save the rest. Sandra forced her breathing to remain shallow and panicked while her mind calculated angles, exits, and threat assessments. The remaining gunmen, Andrew at the staircase, Elena covering the service corridors, moved with the fluid precision of Special Forces veterans. But they'd made one critical error. They'd assumed a 24-year-old black waitress posed no threat. * 3 years of deep cover training. 2 years embedded in civilian life building this identity. All leading to tonight. *. She thought of her father's voice on their last call. Sandra Bear, promise me something. If my research ever surfaces again, if someone tries to weaponize what I created for healing, promise me you'll stop them. Promise me you won't let my life's work become an instrument of death. That was 6 months before he died in what officials called a lab accident. 6 months before she learned the truth about the theft, the cover-up, and the military's real reason for placing her so close to Harrison Blackwood. Hannah. The whispered voice came from beside her. A young man in a waiter's uniform, maybe 19, his dark skin pale with terror. Hannah, I think I'm going to pass out. She turned to him, maintaining her frightened girl facade. What's your name? David. David Santos. This is my first week on the catering crew. His hands shook as he pressed them against his legs. My mom's going to kill me if she finds out I died at some rich people party. Sandra felt an unexpected stab of protectiveness. David reminded her of her younger brother, all nervous energy and good intentions. Hey, look at me, David. We're going to be okay. I need you to stay calm. Can you do that? How are you so calm? He whispered. Those guys have military weapons. This isn't some random robbery. Smart kid. Sometimes when I get really scared, I get really focused instead. My dad taught me that. The lie came easily, but the emotion behind it was real. Her father had taught her that, just not in the way David would imagine. Your dad sounds cool. He was. Sandra's voice caught, and for a moment the grief she'd buried under months of mission preparation threatened to surface. He was a scientist. Always said the best way to solve a problem was to understand it completely first. Andrew's radio crackled from his position by the staircase. Package located. Beginning extraction now. Elena's voice responded from somewhere near the kitchen. Copy. Perimeter secure. Police ETA now 6 minutes. Sandra's blood chilled. 6 minutes wasn't enough time for whatever they planned to do with her father's research. Which meant they intended to deploy it here, tonight, exactly as threatened. She caught sight of movement near the far wall. A woman in an elegant navy dress, Senator Patricia Reynolds, according to Sandra's pre-mission briefing, was slowly reaching toward her clutch purse. Sandra watched the senator's careful movements, noting the practiced way she kept her body shielded from the gunman's line of sight. Former CIA. Has to be. Senator Reynolds caught Sandra watching her and their eyes met. For just a moment, Sandra saw the calculation behind the older woman's careful mask of terror. Then Reynolds mouthed a single word. Military. Sandra's heart pounded. Her cover was holding, but Reynolds had recognized something. Posture, breathing, awareness patterns that marked her as more than a frightened civilian. She gave the tiniest shake of her head, maintaining her wide-eyed expression. But Reynolds wasn't fooled. The senator's eyes narrowed slightly, and Sandra realized she was being evaluated. David, she whispered, I need you to do exactly what I say when I say it. Can you do that? What are you? Promise me. Something in her tone made him nod immediately. Okay. Yeah, I promise. From upstairs came the sound of heavy machinery, some kind of drill or cutting device. Whatever security measures protected Blackwood's vault were serious. which meant whatever was inside was worth serious protection. Found it. The shout echoed down from the upper floor. Package is secure. Beginning Phase 2 prep. Andrew spoke into his radio. Copy. Elena, initiate lockdown protocol. No one leaves the building alive. The words hit the hostages like a physical blow. Several people began crying harder. An elderly man near the windows started hyperventilating. But Sandra was watching Senator Reynolds, who had gone completely still. The woman's face showed terror, but her hands, Sandra could see her hands were steady as rock. Hannah. David's voice was barely audible. What's lockdown protocol mean? Sandra's throat felt dry. It means they were never planning to let us go. But the police will find a building full of dead bodies and no trace of who did this. She was thinking out loud now, pieces clicking together. Phoenix Security doesn't leave witnesses. Ever. How do you know about Phoenix Security? The question came from Senator Reynolds, who had somehow moved 3 feet closer without Sandra noticing. The woman's frightened socialite mask had slipped entirely, revealing something much more dangerous underneath. Sandra's pulse spiked. She'd made a tactical error, revealed knowledge her cover identity shouldn't possess. I heard one of them say it, she stammered. No. Reynolds' voice was soft but certain. None of them mentioned Phoenix by name. So either you're very well informed for a community college student, or you're not who you claim to be. The senator's hand was now resting on her clutch purse, and Sandra caught the glint of metal inside. Definitely armed. Definitely not just a politician. Senator Reynolds. How do you know my name? It wasn't announced tonight. Sandra's mind raced. 3 options. Maintain cover and risk everyone dying when she couldn't act effectively, partially blow cover to gain an ally, or assume Reynolds was compromised and treat her as a threat. The sound of footsteps on the marble staircase made the decision for her. Blackwood was being marched back down, but something was wrong. His face wasn't just terrified anymore, it was guilty. Ashamed. Like a man who'd been caught in a lie he'd been telling for years. Ladies and gentlemen, the lead gunman announced, I have wonderful news. Mr. Blackwood has been very cooperative. In approximately 90 seconds, you're all going to help us test the effectiveness of a revolutionary new biotechnology. Blackwood's voice cracked. You said you just wanted the research data. You said no one would get hurt. You said. Sandra's whisper was sharp enough that both David and Senator Reynolds looked at her. The gunman smiled. Mr. Blackwood has been a valued client of ours for some time. He contracted us to acquire certain sensitive materials from a government laboratory 3 months ago. Unfortunately, he's been less than honest about his willingness to see those materials put to their intended use. Client. Not victim. Client. The betrayal hit Sandra like a physical blow. Harrison Blackwood hadn't been targeted because he possessed stolen military assets. He'd been the one who ordered them stolen in the first place. Her father hadn't died in a lab accident. He'd been murdered by thieves working for the man whose house she'd been living in, whose trust she'd been slowly gaining, whose life she'd been prepared to protect. Sandra. David's voice seemed to come from very far away. Sandra, you're scaring me. What's wrong? She realized she was staring at Blackwood with an expression that had nothing to do with a frightened waitress. Her carefully constructed cover was dissolving under the weight of a revelation that changed everything. Senator Reynolds was studying her with new intensity. Sandra, is it? Not Hannah. But Sandra wasn't listening. She was watching Harrison Blackwood, the man who'd killed her father, as he stared at a small metal canister one of the gunmen was now holding. A canister labeled with her father's handwriting. Project Regeneration, Prototype 7, authorized personnel only. The bioweapon that was supposed to heal. That her father had died trying to protect. That was about to be tested on 43 innocent people to prove its lethality to potential buyers. Sandra closed her eyes and felt the last pieces of her cover identity fall away. When she opened them again, Lieutenant Sandra Darlington was calculating exactly how many people she was going to have to kill in the next 60 seconds. Starting with the man who'd murdered her father. 60 seconds, the lead gunman announced, checking his watch. Then we see if Dr. Darlington's little miracle cure works in reverse. Sandra's hands clenched into fists. Her father's research had been designed to accelerate healing at the cellular level, battlefield medicine that could save soldiers' lives in minutes instead of weeks. But she'd read the classified files. In the wrong hands, the same technology could cause cellular breakdown so rapid it would kill in seconds. Wait. Senator Reynolds stood slowly, her hands visible. I know what that is. I was on the oversight committee for Project Regeneration. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The gunman's smile widened. Actually, Senator, we know exactly what we're dealing with. Our buyer has been very thorough in their research. Buyer? Blackwood's voice cracked. You said this was about eliminating the evidence. You said. We said what you needed to hear to get your cooperation. The gunman gestured to his team. Prepare the aerosol dispersal system. Sandra watched two gunmen begin assembling what looked like a sophisticated ventilation device. They had maybe 30 seconds before the entire ballroom became a death chamber. Point of no return. Act now or watch everyone die. But as she prepared to move, a hand closed around her wrist. Senator Reynolds had somehow gotten close enough to touch her. Wait, Reynolds whispered, her lips barely moving. I know who you are, Lieutenant Darlington. Your handler contacted me 2 hours ago when they lost communication with you. Sandra's blood froze. My handler? Commander Sarah Martinez. Naval Intelligence. She said if something went wrong tonight, I was to give you this. Reynolds pressed something small and metallic into Sandra's palm. And to tell you that your father's real research is still classified. What they stole was a decoy. The object in Sandra's hand was a small device she recognized, a neural interface transmitter used for coordinating SEAL team operations. Her fingers found the activation switch. If this is a decoy, Sandra whispered, then what? The gunman's radio crackled. Phase 3 teams in position. Buyer confirms. If test is successful, proceed to targets 2 through 7 across the city. Targets 2 through 7. Sandra's enhanced training kicked in, analyzing the tactical language. Multiple simultaneous strikes. This wasn't just about testing a bioweapon. This was the opening move in something much larger. Senator, she breathed, how many people are we talking about? 70,000. Maybe more. Reynolds' voice was steady, but her eyes showed the weight of the knowledge. Every major government facility in the metropolitan area. They are planning a coordinated bioweapon attack designed to look like a terrorist incident. David, still crouched beside them, caught fragments of their whispered conversation. Hannah, what are you guys talking about? You're freaking me out. Sandra looked at the young man whose only crime was picking up an extra shift to help pay for college. In 30 seconds, he would die unless she acted, along with 42 other innocent people. And if she didn't stop this here, 70,000 more would follow. David, I need you to trust me. When I say run, you get to that service corridor where the woman with the gun is standing. Can you do that? The woman with the gun. Are you insane? She's going to help us. But I need you to get there fast when I give the signal. How do you know she's going to help us? Because, Senator Reynolds said quietly, she's not the only one here who isn't what she seems. Sandra activated the neural interface transmitter. Immediately, her enhanced hearing picked up multiple radio frequencies. Phoenix Security's tactical channel, local police dispatch, and something else, a frequency she recognized from classified operations. Commander Martinez's voice came through crystal clear. Firebird, this is Control. If you're receiving this, we have a problem. Phoenix Security isn't working for a private buyer. They are working for the Chinese Ministry of State Security. This is the opening move in Operation Red Dawn, a coordinated attack designed to destabilize the U.S. government and military command structure. Sandra's world tilted. Not terrorists. Not arms dealers. A foreign government preparing for war. The bioweapon test is being broadcast live to Beijing, Martinez continued. If successful, they'll implement Phase 2 within the hour. Simultaneous strikes on the Pentagon, CDC headquarters, Naval Intelligence, and 4 other critical infrastructure targets. You are the only asset in position to prevent this. Authorization code, Broken Arrow. Rules of engagement, eliminate all hostiles by any means necessary. Broken Arrow. Authorization for a lone operative to act with lethal force against an imminent threat to national security. Senator, Sandra whispered, you said my father's research was a decoy. What did they actually steal? A prototype that looks identical but breaks down harmlessly in 48 hours. Your father designed it specifically as a trap for anyone trying to steal his work. So the weapon they're about to test will do nothing. But when it fails, they'll know they were fed false intel. The real research location will be compromised within hours. Sandra's mind raced. If the test failed, Phoenix Security would know they'd been played. They'd track down the real research, her father's laboratory, now run by his former partner, Dr. Elizabeth Harrison. The woman who'd been like a second mother to Sandra. The woman who was probably working late tonight, unaware that a strike team would be coming for her. 10 seconds, the gunman called out. Sandra rose slowly from her crouch, her server's uniform suddenly feeling like a costume she'd outgrown. David, get ready to run. Hannah, what are you? My name isn't Hannah. Sandra's voice carried new authority that made several nearby hostages look up. Senator Reynolds, when I move, you take out Elena. David, service corridor. Everyone else, get to the kitchen and barricade the doors. The lead gunman noticed the change in atmosphere and turned toward their group. Hey, I said stay down. Sandra smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, it was completely genuine. You know what your problem is? What? You assumed a Navy SEAL would announce herself before killing you. She moved. The first gunman, the one closest to David, went down before his brain processed what was happening. Sandra's combat knife, concealed against her forearm, opened his throat in a single fluid motion. Senator Reynolds proved she definitely wasn't just a politician. Her first shot took Elena center mass before the woman could swing her rifle around. David, Geo. Sandra shouted, already moving toward the second gunman. But chaos erupted faster than she'd anticipated. The gunman with the bioweapon canister fumbled it during the firefight. The metal cylinder hit the marble floor and cracked, releasing a small puff of aerosol. For a heartbeat, the entire ballroom went silent. Then the lead gunman started laughing. Too late, Lieutenant. Even if it's a decoy, you just proved to our buyers that we can breach any security, anywhere, anytime. Phase 2 is already in motion. Sandra heard boots on the floors above them. More Phoenix security operatives. How many? Her neural interface crackled with new intel. Firebird, multiple vehicles approaching your location. Phoenix has called in reinforcements. Estimate 20 additional hostiles, ETA 3 minutes. 20 more professional killers. Against Sandra, a senator who might or might not be former CIA, and 43 terrified civilians. But as she calculated the odds, Sandra realized something that changed everything. The lead gunman had called her lieutenant. Not by name. He knew her rank, but not her identity. Which meant Phoenix Security had been expecting a military response. They'd planned for this. The robbery, the bioweapon test, even her presence, it was all part of a larger operation designed to draw out and identify American intelligence assets. Her father hadn't just been murdered for his research. He'd been murdered to get to her. Sandra looked around the ballroom, at David helping an elderly woman toward the kitchen, at Senator Reynolds checking her weapon, at Harrison Blackwood cowering against a pillar, and made a choice that would define everything that followed. She wasn't just going to stop an attack on American soil. She was going to make sure the people who killed her father never threatened anyone ever again. Senator, she called out, how many rounds do you have? Enough. Good. Sandra picked up the dead gunman's assault rifle. Because we're about to be outnumbered 10-1. Sandra. David's voice carried from the kitchen doorway. There are more of them outside. They are surrounding the building. Through the grand windows, Sandra could see muzzle flashes. Phoenix Security wasn't just sending reinforcements. They were planning to eliminate every witness in the building, including her. The building shook as explosions rocked the perimeter. Through the grand windows, Sandra could see Phoenix Security operatives rappelling down from helicopters, their movements coordinated with military precision. They are not just surrounding us, Senator Reynolds observed, checking her weapon. They are preparing for a siege. Sandra's neural interface crackled with intercepted Phoenix communications. All units, Prometheus protocol is active. No survivors. Repeat, no survivors. Prometheus protocol. David had made it back from the kitchen, his face pale but determined. What's that? It means they are going to burn this place down with us inside it, Sandra said grimly. She was scanning the ballroom, calculating defensive positions and escape routes. Senator, how many civilians made it to the kitchen? 37. 2 refused to leave, they are hiding behind the bar. Sandra's enhanced hearing picked up movement on the floors above. At least 8 hostiles, maybe more. But something was wrong with their pattern. They were moving too slowly, too carefully for a building assault. They are planting charges, she realized. They are going to bring down sections of the building to trap us. As if summoned by her words, a new voice came through her neural interface. But this one wasn't from Commander Martinez or Phoenix Security. The frequency was encrypted, military grade, and completely unexpected. Lieutenant Darlington, This is Captain Jake Charlson, Army Special Forces. I'm embedded with the Phoenix team. Sandra's blood chilled. Phoenix had U.S. military assets working with them. Sir, I need to verify. There's no time. I've been undercover for 8 months tracking Operation Red Dawn. Your father wasn't just murdered for his research. He was eliminated because he discovered the mole inside naval intelligence. A mole. That explained how Phoenix knew exactly where to find her, how they'd anticipated military response, how they'd known her rank but not her identity. Who's the mole? Still unknown. But Lieutenant, I need you to listen carefully. The Phoenix team doesn't know I'm compromised. In 60 seconds, they are going to breach the ballroom from 3 directions. I can give you a 10-second window when my sector will be clear, but you'll have to trust me. Sandra's training screamed warnings. A voice on encrypted military frequencies didn't guarantee legitimacy. This could be another layer of deception. But through the windows, she could see the Phoenix operatives moving with deadly efficiency. In 60 seconds, they'd be inside with overwhelming force. She needed every advantage. Senator, she called softly, we're about to have company. Reynolds nodded, taking position behind a marble pillar. How many? Too many. Sandra turned to David. I need you to get back to the kitchen and tell everyone to get as far from the windows as possible. There's going to be. The building's lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in hellish red. Sandra's enhanced vision adapted immediately, but the civilians behind the bar started whimpering in terror. Motion sensors, Senator Reynolds observed. They are hunting us in the dark. Sandra's neural interface buzzed with Charlson's voice. 30 seconds. They've got thermal imaging, but I can create a distraction. When you see the flashbang in the east corridor, you'll have your window. Why should I trust you? Because your father saved my life in Kandahar 6 years ago. Because he told me about his brilliant daughter who was going to change the world. And because if you don't trust me, everyone in this building dies in the next 5 minutes. Sandra's heart stuttered. Her father had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before transitioning to biochemical research. He'd never talked about the people he'd saved, but she'd always known there were stories he kept to himself. What was his call sign? Phoenix Rising. He said it was because he always found a way to come back from impossible situations. Charlson's voice carried genuine emotion, just like he taught his daughter to do. Only someone who knew her father well would know that call sign, and know why he'd chosen it. Copy, Captain. I'll be ready. But as Sandra prepared for the breach, movement caught her eye. Ariel Handrel was no longer cowering behind his pillar. He was moving slowly, deliberately toward a section of wall that looked identical to the rest of the marble facade. Asterisk hidden panel. Has to be. Asterisk. Sandra used hand signals to get Senator Reynolds' attention, then pointed toward Blackwood. The senator's eyes narrowed as she tracked the billionaire's movements. Blackwood pressed something on the wall, and a section of marble slid aside, revealing a hidden passage. But instead of escaping, he pulled out a small device and began typing rapidly. He's sending a message, Reynolds whispered. Sandra's blood went cold. Blackwood wasn't just Phoenix Security's client. He was actively coordinating with them. The terrified, guilt-ridden act had been exactly that, an act. 20 seconds, Charlson's voice warned. Sandra made a split-second decision. She moved toward Blackwood, using the red emergency lighting and marble pillars for cover. If he was communicating with Phoenix, she needed to know what information he was passing along. As she got closer, she could see his device clearly. A military-grade encrypted communicator. The text on the screen made her breath catch. Seal identified as Sandra Darlington. Repeat. Target is Lieutenant Sandra Darlington, daughter of Dr. Richard Darlington. High-value asset for interrogation. Modify capture protocols accordingly. They knew who she was. Worse, they knew about her connection to her father's research. Sandra was 3 feet from Blackwood when the flashbang detonated in the east corridor. In the brilliant white explosion of light and sound, she moved. Blackwood's neck snapped before he could scream. But as his body hit the floor, his communicator clattered away, screen still lit. Sandra lunged for it, but Senator Reynolds' voice stopped her cold. Sandra, we've got a problem. Sandra looked up to see Reynolds pointing toward the hidden passage Blackwood had opened. Footsteps were echoing from inside, multiple sets, moving fast. There's another team, Reynolds said grimly. They were already inside the building. Sandra's neural interface exploded with Charlson's panicked voice. Darlington, abort. Abort. It's a trap, they knew about the passage. The thermal imaging was a distraction. There. His transmission cut to static. Through the passage came 4 figures in advanced tactical gear. But these weren't Phoenix security operators. Their equipment was different, more sophisticated. And the insignia on their armor made Sandra's blood turn to ice. Ministry of State Security. Chinese intelligence operatives. The lead operative smiled as he raised his weapon. Lieutenant Sandra Darlington. Your father sends his regards. Sandra's world stopped. My father is dead. Is he? The operative's English was perfect, unaccented. Dr. Richard Darlington has been a guest of the People's Republic for 3 months now. Very productive work on biological countermeasures. He'll be so pleased to know his daughter has joined our little experiment. Asterisk alive. Her father was alive. Asterisk. You're lying. Am I? Tell me, Lieutenant, how did Phoenix Security know exactly where to find you? How did they know your cover identity, your mission parameters, your handler's communication protocols? Sandra's mind raced. The mole. The leak in naval intelligence. It hadn't been about selling information to Phoenix Security. It had been about delivering hair to Chinese intelligence. Your father has been quite forthcoming about your capabilities, the operative continued. A Navy SEAL with biochemical expertise, trained in deep cover operations, emotionally compromised by her father's apparent death. Perfect for recruitment. I'll never work for you. Oh, but you will. Because if you don't, Dr. Darlington's continued health becomes uncertain. And because the woman you know as Dr. Elizabeth Darlington, your father's dear friend and research partner, is currently enjoying similar hospitality in Shanghai. Sandra felt the world tilt. Everything she'd believed about her father's death, about her mission, about why she was here, all of it had been orchestrated to bring her to this moment. What do you want? Simple. You're going to help us perfect your father's research. Real research this time, not the decoy you've been chasing. And you're going to help us deploy it against very specific targets in the American military command structure. Senator Reynolds raised her weapon. Like hell she is. The Chinese operative didn't even look at her. Senator Patricia Reynolds, former CIA operative, current chairwoman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Your presence here tonight was also expected. Did you really think we didn't know about your coordination with naval intelligence? Sandra's neural interface suddenly came alive with a new frequency. Charleston's voice, but different now, strained, desperate. Sandra, they've got me. This whole thing, the Phoenix security robbery, the bioweapon test, even my undercover assignment, it was all designed to bring you and Reynolds together in one place. They needed to identify which American intelligence assets knew about Operation Red Dawn. Asterisk a trap within a trap. Asterisk. How many people know the real scope of Red Dawn? The Chinese operative asked conversationally. 12. 20. Well, after tonight, it will be significantly fewer. Sandra heard explosions from multiple directions. Not just at their building, but across the city. The coordinated attack was beginning. Phase 2 is now active, the operative smiled. Bioweapon strikes on 7 military installations, designed to look like terrorist attacks. By morning, America will be declaring martial law and preparing for war against the wrong enemy. While you move on Taiwan, Senator Reynolds said. While we reunite Taiwan with the mainland, yes. A much easier operation when American Pacific Fleet Command is dealing with a biological crisis at home. Sandra's mind was calculating desperately. Her father alive but captive. Dr. Darlington captured. A coordinated attack underway. Chinese operatives in control of the situation. And somewhere in the building, Captain Charleston, if he was really who he claimed to be, was either dead or captured. I need proof, Sandra said. Proof my father is alive. The operative smiled and pulled out a tablet. Of course. The video that played made Sandra's knees nearly buckle. Her father, looking older and thinner but very much alive, sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable laboratory. He was speaking directly to the camera. Sandra Bear, if you're watching this, then our friends have succeeded in bringing you home. I know this isn't what we planned, but sometimes the best way to protect the people you love is to work with those who have the power to keep them safe. Please, sweetheart. Do what they ask. For me. For Elizabeth. For all the lives we can save together. Sandra closed her eyes. When she opened them, the Chinese operative was watching her with satisfaction. Your father is quite persuasive. He's already helped us develop countermeasures for several American biological defense systems. With your operational expertise added to his scientific knowledge. You'll have everything you need to win a war without firing a shot, Sandra finished. Precisely. Sandra looked around the ballroom, at Senator Reynolds, whose weapon was trained on hostiles she couldn't possibly defeat, at David and the other civilians, whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time, at the hidden passage that had turned this from a rescue operation into a recruitment pitch backed by overwhelming force. If I agree to cooperate, Sandra said slowly, what happens to the people here? They witness a tragic terrorist attack carried out by domestic extremists. Very sad. But these things happen in unstable democracies. And if I refuse? They witness a tragic terrorist attack carried out by domestic extremists. And your father experiences an unfortunate laboratory accident. And Dr. Darlington suffers a similar mishap. And you spend the rest of your life wondering how many more people died because you chose pride over pragmatism. Sandra's neural interface crackled one last time with Charleston's voice, so faint she almost missed it. Darlington, the device. Blackwood's communicator. Upload everything. Trust the frequency. She looked down at Blackwood's dropped communicator, its screen still glowing with encrypted data. Data that might contain everything Phoenix Security and their Chinese handlers had planned. Data that might be the only way to stop an attack that was already in motion. Sandra made her choice. I'll need to see my father first. Before I agree to anything. The Chinese operative smiled. Of course. We've prepared transportation. You'll be in Shanghai within 12 hours. What about Senator Reynolds? What about the civilians? They've served their purpose. Sandra heard the safeties clicking off multiple weapons. In 10 seconds, everyone in the ballroom except her would be dead. Unless she could reach Blackwood's communicator and upload its data to Charleston's frequency before the shooting started. Unless Senator Reynolds was more than she appeared to be. Unless everything she'd been told in the last 5 minutes was another layer of deception designed to break her spirit before the real operation began. Sandra looked at the Chinese operative's confident smile and realized something that changed everything. He was standing too close to the windows. And Sandra could hear helicopters approaching from the east. Helicopters that weren't showing up on her neural interface's Phoenix Security frequency. Which meant someone else was about to join this party. Someone the Chinese operatives weren't expecting. Sandra smiled back at the operative. You know what? I think I'll wait to see how this plays out. That wasn't a request, Lieutenant. I know. Sandra's hand moved toward Blackwood's communicator. But you made one critical error in your planning. Which is? Sandra's fingers found the device. You assumed my father would break. She activated the upload just as the windows exploded inward. The repelling figures that crashed through the windows moved with surgical precision, but their gear was wrong. Not Chinese. Not Phoenix Security. Sandra's enhanced vision caught details that made her heart race, U.S. Army Special Forces patches, but with a unit designation she didn't recognize. This is Alpha Team, came a voice through her neural interface. Friendlies on site. Package locations confirmed. The Chinese operative who'd been smiling seconds before now looked genuinely surprised. This wasn't in the briefing. Sandra felt a surge of hope as the Special Forces team engaged the Chinese operatives with overwhelming firepower. But something nagged at her. The timing was too perfect. The arrival too convenient. Sandra. Senator Reynolds grabbed her arm. We need to move while they are distracted. But Sandra was watching the tactical formation of the rescue team, and a chill ran down her spine. She'd seen this exact pattern before, in classified training footage. Delta Force. Tier 1 operators. Which meant this wasn't a rescue operation. This was asset recovery. Senator, Sandra said quietly, how did they know we were here? Charleston must have. Charleston's been captured or killed. His last transmission was barely audible. Sandra's mind was racing. So how did a Delta team know exactly which windows to breach, exactly when to arrive, exactly where to find us? Before Reynolds could answer, one of the Delta operators approached them. His movements were fluid, confident, and familiar. Lieutenant Darlington, he said, removing his tactical helmet. Captain Jake Charleston, Army Special Forces. Good to finally meet you face to face. Sandra stared at the man who'd been guiding her through encrypted communications. Tall, sandy hair, gray eyes that seemed to catalog everything. And something else, a scar along his jaw that matched a description from her father's old war stories. You're real, she breathed. Real enough. Charleston's smile was warm, genuine. Your father told me about the scar. Said you'd recognize it from his stories about the medic who saved his unit in Kandahar. Sandra felt something she hadn't experienced in months of deep cover: trust. Charleston knew details only someone close to her father would know. Details that couldn't be fabricated or extracted under interrogation. How did you know where to find us? Your upload from Blackwood's communicator. The data included building schematics and thermal imaging from Phoenix's surveillance system. We've been tracking your location for the last 20 minutes. Sandra looked around the ballroom. The Chinese operatives were down, but something felt wrong. The Delta team was moving too efficiently, like they'd rehearsed this exact scenario. Charleston, she said carefully, what's your mission here? Extract you and Senator Reynolds. Secure any intelligence about Operation Red Dawn. And, he paused, his expression shifting to something more personal. Find out what really happened to your father. You mean what really happened to his research? No. Charleston's voice carried conviction. I mean what really happened to Dr. Richard Darlington. Because according to our intelligence, your father died 3 months ago in a laboratory explosion. Which means the video you just saw was either old footage or what? Or someone has developed technology that can create convincing deepfakes in real time. Sandra's world tilted. You're saying my father is still dead. I'm saying we need to verify everything. Charleston gestured toward his team. But first, we need to get you and the civilians out of here. Phoenix Security is regrouping for another assault. As if summoned by his words, Sandra's neural interface crackled with intercepted communications. Target acquired. Firebird is in the building. Execute Omega Protocol. Omega Protocol? Sandra asked. Charleston's face went grim. Total building destruction. They are going to level this place. Sandra looked around at the civilians still hiding in the kitchen, at David who'd trusted her with his life, at Senator Reynolds who'd proven herself in combat. How long do we have? Maybe 10 minutes. But as Charleston spoke, Sandra caught something in his peripheral vision that made her blood freeze. Senator Reynolds was standing near the hidden passage Blackwood had opened, and she was holding a small device Sandra recognized from classified briefings. A dead man's switch. Senator, Sandra said slowly, what's that in your hand? Reynolds turned, and for the first time since the robbery began, she looked genuinely sad. I'm sorry, Sandra. I really hoped it wouldn't come to this. Charleston's weapon was up instantly, but Reynolds shook her head. Don't, Captain. This device is linked to charges placed throughout the building. If my heart stops beating, or if I release pressure on this switch, everyone dies. Sandra felt the last foundation of trust crumble beneath her feet. You're the mole. I'm the mole. Reynolds' voice carried no pride, only resignation. For 18 months, I've been feeding information to Chinese intelligence. Not because I wanted to, but because they have something I can't live without. Money. Power. My daughter. Reynolds' voice cracked. Emily was kidnapped during a college exchange program in Beijing. They've had her for 2 years. They said if I cooperated, she'd be released. If I didn't. Sandra understood. The same leverage they'd tried to use on her with her father. Senator, Charleston said carefully, we can help you get your daughter back. But you need to put down the device. No, you can't. Because she's already dead. Tears streamed down Reynolds' face. I found out 3 hours ago. They killed her 6 months ago and have been using old video calls to maintain the illusion. All of this, the betrayal, the information, the coordination with tonight's operation, all of it was for nothing. Sandra felt Charleston move slightly closer to her, and realized with a shock that he was positioning himself to shield her body with his own. The gesture was protective, intimate, and completely professional all at once. Patricia, Sandra said, using the senator's first name, you can still stop this. The Chinese operatives are dead. Phoenix Security can be defeated. We can end this tonight. No, we can't. Reynolds held up her other hand, showing a small tablet. Operation Red Dawn isn't just bioweapon attacks on military installations. It's a coordinated strike designed to trigger automatic retaliation protocols. When those bases go dark, the Pentagon's AI defense systems will interpret it as a first strike and launch countermeasures. Charleston grabbed Sandra's arm. Countermeasures against who? Against the wrong targets. The AI has been fed false intelligence for months, identifying North Korea as the source of the bioweapons. When the automatic retaliation launches, it will trigger a nuclear response from North Korea against South Korea. China will then reluctantly intervene to restore stability to the region. Sandra's mind reeled. Starting World War III. While appearing to be the peacemaker. Reynolds looked at her tablet. The first bioweapon deployment begins in 90 seconds. Unless what? Unless I send a abort code that will stop the attack but reveal the locations of every American intelligence asset in the Pacific, including the deep cover operatives who've spent years building relationships in Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong. Sandra understood the choice. Stop a war but sacrifice dozens of intelligence operatives who would be tortured and killed. Or let the war begin and hope they could find another way to stop it. There's a third option, Charlson said quietly. Which is? We get you out of here alive. Because according to your father's research notes, you're the only person who can synthesize the antidote to his bioweapon in real time. Sandra stared at him. What are you talking about? Your father didn't just develop a healing accelerant. He developed a biological key that would allow someone with specific genetic markers to neutralize any bioweapon derived from his research. Someone like his daughter, who inherited those exact genetic markers. You're saying I'm immune. I'm saying you're the cure. Charlson's voice carried awe and desperation. But only if we can get you to a laboratory with the right equipment. Reynolds was watching this exchange with growing understanding. They didn't just want Sandra for her operational skills. They wanted her because she's literally the key to stopping their own weapon. Which means, Sandra realized, if I'm captured, they can deploy the bioweapon without fear of consequences. But if I'm free, you can stop them. Charlson nodded. But we need to go now. Sandra looked around the ballroom one more time. At David and the civilians who'd trusted her. At Senator Reynolds, whose daughter's death had turned her into an unwilling traitor. At the bodies of Chinese operatives and Phoenix security contractors who'd died for someone else's war. What about the people here? I'll stay, Reynolds said quietly. I'll make sure they get out safely. And then? She looked at the dead man's switch. Then I'll make sure Phoenix security never threatens anyone again. Patricia, no. My daughter is dead, Sandra. I helped start a war to save her, and she was already gone. The least I can do is help stop it. Charlson was pulling Sandra toward the broken windows. We have to go. Now. But Sandra pulled back. Charlson, how do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know this isn't another layer of deception? Charlson stopped, turned to face her fully. Because of this. He reached into his tactical vest and pulled out a small object that made Sandra's breath catch. A photograph, creased and faded. Her father in military fatigues, arm around a younger version of Charlson. Both men smiling, covered in dust and blood but alive. He carried this picture for 6 years, Charlson said. Even after he transitioned to civilian research, he kept it in his laboratory. It was in his personal effects after the explosion. Sandra took the photograph with trembling hands. On the back, in her father's handwriting. Jake, thanks for keeping me alive long enough to see my little girl become everything I hoped for. Rich. The handwriting was authentic. The sentiment was pure her father. He loved you more than his own life, Charlson said softly. And he trusted me to keep you safe if anything ever happened to him. Sandra looked into Charlson's eyes and saw something she hadn't expected, love. Not romantic love, not yet, but the fierce protective love of someone who'd made a promise to a dying friend. 60 seconds. Reynolds called out. The bioweapon deployment begins in 60 seconds. Sandra made her choice. She kissed Charlson quickly, fiercely, tasting desperation and hope in equal measure. Get me to that laboratory, she said. Let's stop a war. As Charlson's team prepared to rappel down from the windows, Sandra heard Senator Reynolds speaking quietly into her tablet. Abort code transmitted. All assets compromised. Operation Red Dawn is terminated. And then, softer. Emily, Mommy's coming home. Sandra was halfway down the rope when the building behind her erupted in flames. Senator Patricia Reynolds had made sure Phoenix security would never threaten anyone again. But as Sandra's feet touched the ground and Charlson pulled her toward a waiting helicopter, her neural interface crackled with a new transmission. Lieutenant Darlington, this is Admiral Sarah Darlington, Pacific Fleet Command. Sandra's blood turned to ice. Darlington, her father's sister. The aunt she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Aunt Sarah. Hello, sweetheart. I'm sorry about Patricia. She was a good woman caught in an impossible situation. But I need you to know something about your father's research, about Operation Red Dawn, and about why you're the key to stopping a war that's already begun. Sandra looked at Charlson, who was listening to the transmission with growing alarm. What aren't you telling me? Sandra demanded. Sweetheart, Admiral Darlington's voice carried pain that made Sandra's chest tight. Your father isn't dead. He isn't captive in China. And the bioweapon isn't the real threat. What's the real threat? You are. Sandra felt Charleston's arm tighten around her waist as the helicopter lifted off. Aunt Sarah, what are you talking about? Your father's research wasn't just about healing accelerants or bioweapons. It was about creating enhanced human beings. Soldiers who could survive anything, heal from any injury, adapt to any environment. Sandra's enhanced hearing, her accelerated healing from training injuries, her ability to process information faster than any normal human. Suddenly everything made sense. He experimented on me. He enhanced you. With your consent, when you were 18 and about to join the military. You wanted to be able to protect people, and he wanted to give you the tools to do it. But the side effects are just beginning to manifest. Enhanced healing, enhanced senses, enhanced cognitive function. But also enhanced emotional capacity, enhanced empathy, enhanced ability to form deep connections with other enhanced individuals. Sandra looked at Charleston and saw understanding dawn in his eyes. You're like me, she whispered. We all are, he said. Every member of my team. Every deep cover operative working on Operation Red Dawn cases. Your father enhanced dozens of us over the years. But why? Admiral Darlington's voice carried the weight of classified truth. Because he knew that someday, humanity would face a threat that normal soldiers couldn't handle. And he wanted to make sure you'd have the tools, and the team, to face it together. What threat? The one that's been coordinating Operation Red Dawn from the beginning. The one that's been manipulating Chinese intelligence, Phoenix security, and even elements of our own government. Sandra felt Charleston's hand find hers, their enhanced nervous systems creating an instant connection that was deeper than physical touch. Aunt Sarah, what's really going on? Sweetheart, Operation Red Dawn was never about Chinese expansion or bioweapons or even starting a war between nations. Then what was it about? It was about identifying and gathering every enhanced individual your father created. Because someone, or something, wants us all in one place. Sandra looked out the helicopter window at the burning building below, at the city lights stretching to the horizon, at Charleston's team of enhanced soldiers who'd risked everything to save her. We're not soldiers, she realized. We're bait. Yes, Admiral Darlington said quietly. And tomorrow, you're going to find out what we've been designed to catch. The helicopter touched down on what appeared to be an abandoned oil platform 12 miles off the coast. But as Sandra stepped onto the landing pad, her enhanced senses immediately recognized the deception. Hidden beneath the rusted exterior was military-grade technology, power sources, communications arrays, defensive systems. Welcome to Prometheus Station. Admiral Darlington's voice came through speakers around the platform. Your father's greatest achievement. Charleston helped Sandra down from the helicopter, their enhanced connection allowing her to feel his growing unease. His team spread out in defensive positions, but something was wrong. Their movements were too rigid, too mechanical. Charleston, Sandra said quietly, are your men acting strange? He followed her gaze and his face went pale. Johnson, report status. The soldier he'd addressed turned slowly, and Sandra saw what Charleston had noticed. Johnson's eyes were vacant, unfocused. When he spoke, his voice carried no emotion. Status optimal. Awaiting further instructions. They are being controlled, Sandra breathed. Not controlled, came a familiar voice from behind them. Enhanced. Sandra spun around to see her father walking across the platform. Not the aged, thin man from the Chinese video, but Dr. Richard Darlington exactly as she remembered him. Tall, confident, brilliant eyes that seemed to catalog everything. Dad! Sandra's voice cracked. Hello, Sandra Bear. His smile was warm, genuine, and completely terrifying. You've grown so much stronger since I last saw you. But you're dead. I went to your funeral. I saw. You saw what you needed to see to motivate your development. Dr. Darlington gestured toward Charleston's team, who were now standing in perfect formation like soldiers awaiting orders. Just as they are seeing what they need to see to accept their upgrades. Sandra looked at Charleston, whose expression was shifting between confusion and horror. What upgrades? The final phase of human enhancement, Dr. Darlington explained, pulling out a small device that looked like a medical scanner. Enhanced healing was just the beginning. Enhanced senses, enhanced cognitive function, all stepping stones to the real goal. Which is perfect soldiers. Humans who can interface directly with quantum-level technology. Warriors who can think and react faster than any artificial intelligence. Dr. Darlington's eyes gleamed with scientific fervor. The next step in human evolution. Sandra felt Charleston's hand slip from hers as he staggered backward. When she looked at him, she saw the same vacant expression that had overtaken his team. "No," she whispered. "The nanobots in their enhancement serums were always designed for this moment," Dr. Darlington continued. "When exposed to the quantum field generators I've installed on this platform, enhanced individuals undergo complete neural integration with the collective consciousness. You're turning them into drones. I'm turning them into something better than human." Dr. Darlington stepped closer, and Sandra saw madness lurking behind his brilliant facade. "Sandra, you were my prototype, my proof of concept. But you were always meant to be more than just enhanced." "More how?" "You were designed to be the command node, the one individual who can control all the others." Dr. Darlington held up his scanner, which was now displaying complex biological readouts. "Your unique genetic modifications allow you to interface with the collective while maintaining individual consciousness. You can lead an army of perfect soldiers." Sandra looked at Charleston, whose vacant eyes now focused on her with mechanical precision. "Charleston, can you hear me?" "I hear you, Command Node," he replied in the same emotionless tone as his team. Awaiting instructions. Sandra's enhanced emotional capacity made the loss feel like a physical wound. The connection she'd felt with Charleston, the trust, the growing attraction, the sense of finding someone who understood her, all of it had been an illusion created by their shared enhancements. "Why?" Sandra turned to her father, anger replacing shock. "Why fake your death? Why manipulate me? Why turn good people into weapons?" "Because humanity is facing an extinction-level threat," Dr. Darlington said simply. "And normal humans aren't equipped to handle it." "What threat?" Dr. Darlington activated a holographic display that materialized above the platform. Sandra found herself looking at satellite imagery of major cities around the world: Beijing, Moscow, London, New York, Tokyo. But there was something wrong with the images. Sections of each city appeared to be empty. Not destroyed, not damaged. Simply void. "Quantum entities," Dr. Darlington explained. "Interdimensional beings that exist outside our normal space-time. 3 months ago, they began what we can only call reconnaissance missions. Sections of reality simply cease to exist when they pass through." Sandra stared at the images in horror. "How many people?" 4 to 7 million so far. "They simply stop existing. No bodies, no traces, no evidence they were ever there except for the empty spaces they leave behind." "And you think enhanced soldiers can fight something like that?" "I think enhanced soldiers interfacing with quantum-level technology might be able to exist in the same dimensional space as these entities." Dr. Darlington's expression was both hopeful and terrifying. "I think you, specifically, might be able to command an army that can fight for the survival of human consciousness itself." Sandra felt the weight of impossible choice settling on her shoulders. Accept her father's plan and become the commander of an army of enslaved enhanced humans. Reject it and watch humanity face extinction against entities that existed beyond physical reality. There has to be another way. There is no other way. Dr. Darlington's facade of calm cracked. "I've spent 3 years developing this solution. 3 years watching quantum entities systematically erase chunks of human civilization. 3 years knowing that my enhanced daughter was the only hope for species survival. What about free will? What about the choice to fight or not fight? Free will is a luxury we can't afford." Dr. Darlington gestured toward Charleston and his team. "These men volunteered to be enhanced, knowing the risks. They've served their purpose in getting you here safely. Now they can serve their higher purpose in saving humanity." Sandra looked at Charleston, really looked at him. Even with his consciousness suppressed, she could see traces of the man who'd protected her, who'd carried her father's photograph for 6 years, who'd kissed her with desperate hope. "If I refuse, then I activate the global quantum field generators I've placed in enhanced individuals around the world. Every person your father enhanced, and there are hundreds, becomes part of the collective whether you command them or not." Dr. Darlington's voice carried absolute conviction. "Better you lead them consciously than I control them mechanically." Sandra felt her enhanced analytical abilities processing the scenario at superhuman speed. Dr. Darlington had spent years orchestrating this moment. Operation Red Dawn, the bioweapon attacks, even tonight's events, all designed to gather enhanced individuals in one place for conversion. "You created the quantum entities," she realized. I created the technology to detect them, Dr. Darlington corrected. But Sandra, they are real. They are coming. And in approximately 18 hours, they are going to attempt a coordinated strike that will erase every major population center on Earth. How do you know? Dr. Darlington's expression grew haunted. Because they told me. When I first developed quantum detection technology, I made contact. They are not malevolent, Sandra. They are conducting what they call dimensional cleanup. From their perspective, human consciousness is a contamination that needs to be removed. Sandra stared at her father, the man who'd raised her, taught her, inspired her to serve others. The man who'd apparently been conducting secret experiments on humanity for years. You made a deal with them. I negotiated a delay. They agreed to postpone full-scale cleanup for 3 years while I developed enhanced humans capable of existing in quantum-dimensional space. Dr. Darlington stepped closer. Tomorrow, that grace period ends. Sandra felt Charleston's vacant gaze on her and realized with horror that she could sense his suppressed consciousness. Her enhanced empathy was picking up his trapped emotions: confusion, betrayal, a desperate desire to break free from whatever was controlling him. Dad, the people you've enhanced, they are still in there, aren't they? Still conscious but unable to control their bodies. Consciousness is preserved, yes. That's necessary for quantum-dimensional interface. Sandra understood. Her father hadn't just enslaved these people. He'd trapped them in their own bodies, aware but helpless. You've created a hell worse than death. I've created soldiers capable of fighting for the survival of human consciousness itself, Dr. Darlington insisted. Sandra, you have 18 hours to decide. Command the enhanced army willingly, or watch me activate global conversion protocols that will transform every enhanced individual into a quantum interface soldier whether you participate or not. Sandra looked around the platform. Charleston and his team stood motionless, their enhanced bodies waiting for commands their minds couldn't give. In the distance, she could see other platforms, other groups of converted enhanced humans. Her father had been gathering his army for months. How many people have you enhanced over the years? 843 individuals across 7 countries. Dr. Darlington smiled proudly. Intelligence operatives, special forces soldiers, scientists, even some civilians who showed genetic compatibility. All waiting for their chance to serve humanity's survival. Sandra felt her enhanced emotional capacity threatening to overwhelm her. 843 people, all about to lose their free will. All about to become weapons in a war they hadn't chosen to fight. And if I command them? If I become your command node? What happens to my consciousness? Dr. Darlington's hesitation told her everything she needed to know. You'll be preserved, he said carefully. But enhanced. Expanded. You'll experience consciousness on a quantum level that normal humans can't comprehend. I'll stop being human. You'll become something better than human. Sandra closed her eyes and felt the weight of species survival pressing down on her. In 18 hours, quantum entities would begin erasing human civilization. Her father's enhanced army might be the only force capable of fighting them. But accepting command meant sacrificing her humanity and the free will of hundreds of innocent people. Refusing meant potentially watching humanity cease to exist. When she opened her eyes, Charleston was looking directly at her. For just a moment, his expression cleared, and she saw the man she'd begun to care about fighting against his technological restraints. Sandra, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Don't trust him. Then the vacant expression returned, and Charleston stood motionless once again. Sandra stared at her father, the man who'd shaped her entire life, who'd enhanced her without her knowledge, who was now asking her to sacrifice everything she believed in to save a species that might not want to be saved. I need time to think. You have until dawn, Dr. Darlington said. Then the quantum entities begin their final cleanup protocol. And I activate global enhancement conversion whether you're ready or not. As Sandra walked toward the quarters her father had prepared for her, she realized that every choice led to the same destination. The end of human free will as a necessary sacrifice for human survival. The only question was whether she would be a willing participant in humanity's transformation or a prisoner watching it happen. Behind her, Charleston's suppressed consciousness screamed silently for help she couldn't give. And somewhere beyond the dimensional barriers of normal space-time, quantum entities prepared to erase everything she'd ever loved. Sandra sat alone in the sterile quarters her father had prepared, staring at her hands. Enhanced hands. Hands that could heal faster than normal, react quicker than humanly possible, and apparently interface with quantum technology to command an army of enslaved soldiers. The weight of 843 lives pressed against her consciousness like a physical force. In 6 hours, dawn would break and her father would activate his global conversion protocols. Every enhanced individual around the world would lose their free will, becoming quantum interface soldiers whether she led them or not. Her neural interface crackled with a weak transmission. "Sandra, can you hear me?" Charleson's voice, barely a whisper through the technological suppression. "I hear you," she whispered back, hoping her enhanced vocal cords could modulate quietly enough to avoid detection. "The quantum entities, not what your father thinks, been watching you specifically, for years." Sandra's blood chilled. "What do you mean?" "Your enhancements, not just random genetic modification. You're quantum compatible because you're part quantum entity." The transmission cut to static, but Charleson's words hit Sandra like a physical blow. She thought about her enhanced abilities, her capacity to connect with other enhanced individuals, her emotional intensity that seemed to transcend normal human experience. Part quantum entity. Sandra stood and walked to the small window overlooking the ocean. In the distance, she could see other platforms, each one holding groups of converted enhanced humans standing in perfect formation. Her father's army, waiting for commands they couldn't refuse. But as she watched, Sandra noticed something her father hadn't mentioned. The enhanced individuals weren't just standing motionless. They were resonating, like tuning forks responding to the same frequency. And that frequency was coming from her. She was already connected to them. Had been since the moment she'd stepped onto the platform. Sandra closed her eyes and let her enhanced senses expand. Immediately, she could feel Charleson's consciousness, trapped but fighting. Johnson and the other Delta operators, their awareness locked behind technological barriers but still present. And beyond them, dozens more enhanced individuals across the other platforms. All of them connected to her. All of them waiting. I don't have to wait for dawn. I'm already the command node. Sandra opened her eyes with new understanding. Her father's quantum field generators weren't creating the connection, they were amplifying it. She'd been quantum compatible since birth because she was never fully human to begin with. The door to her quarters opened, and Dr. Darlington entered carrying a small case. "I brought you something," he said, setting the case on the small table. "Something that will help you understand the choice you're making." Inside the case was a device Sandra had never seen before, crystalline, pulsing with soft light, clearly not of human origin. "What is it?" "A quantum communication array. Recovered from one of the first entity reconnaissance sites." Dr. Darlington activated the device, and immediately the air around them shifted, becoming thick and strange. "It allows direct interface with quantum dimensional consciousness." The device hummed to life, and suddenly Sandra could hear them. Voices that existed outside normal space-time, speaking in harmonics that bypassed her ears and resonated directly in her enhanced consciousness. Chen hybrid. "You have matured. Sandra staggered backward. "They know me. They've been watching you since birth," Dr. Darlington said quietly. "Sandra, I need to tell you the truth about your mother. My mother died in childbirth. Your mother was a quantum entity who took human form to study our species." Dr. Darlington's voice carried 24 years of hidden guilt. When she became pregnant, the quantum collective decided the hybrid offspring might be useful for their dimensional cleanup operations. Sandra felt her world fracturing. "You're saying I'm half alien?" "I'm saying you're half quantum entity, which is why you can interface with enhanced humans, why your emotional capacity transcends normal human experience, why you've always felt like you didn't quite belong." The quantum voices grew stronger. Chen hybrid. "The cleanup begins at solar convergence. Your human units will assist or be processed. They are not offering me a choice," Sandra realized. "They are giving me an ultimatum. Human consciousness is dimensional contamination. Your hybrid nature allows limited preservation of favored specimens. Choose which humans survive. Sandra understood with horrible clarity. The quantum entities weren't planning to erase all of humanity, just most of it. The enhanced individuals would be preserved as hybrid human servants, and she would choose which normal humans deserved to live. "How many?" she asked the quantum voices. Preservation limit, 1 million human units. Select optimal specimens. 1 million people. Out of 8 billion. And she would decide who lived and who simply stopped existing. "Dad," Sandra turned to her father, "this isn't about fighting for humanity's survival. This is about managing humanity's extinction." Dr. Darlington's facade finally cracked completely. It's about preserving something human in a universe that has no place for our species. You made a deal to genocide 7 billion people. I made a deal to save 1 million people and preserve human consciousness in quantum-dimensional space. Dr. Darlington's voice carried the desperation of a man who'd compromised everything for an impossible choice. Sandra, they were going to erase us completely. This way, some trace of humanity continues. Sandra felt her enhanced emotional capacity threatening to overwhelm her system. Her father, the man she'd idolized, the scientist who'd taught her to help people, had orchestrated the systematic murder of most of the human race, and wanted her help choosing the survivors. The quantum communication device pulsed brighter, *Chen hybrid. Decision required. Solar convergence in 3.7 rotations. Sandra closed her eyes and reached out through her quantum connection to Charleson's consciousness. Past the technological suppression, past the neural barriers, into the core of who he was. Charlson, can you hear me? Sandra. Yes, but something's wrong. The quantum entities, they are not what your father thinks. What do you mean? I've been fighting the suppression for hours, gaining access to data your father doesn't know about. The quantum entities aren't cleaning up dimensional contamination. Then what are they doing? They are harvesting consciousness. Human awareness is something they can't create naturally. They need our capacity for individual thought, emotion, creativity. Sandra's understanding shifted completely. The quantum entities weren't eliminating humanity because they saw it as contamination. They were farming humanity because human consciousness was a resource they required. The enhanced individuals aren't being preserved as servants, Charlson continued. They are being prepared as consciousness batteries. And you're not the command node, you're the harvesting interface. Sandra opened her eyes and looked at her father, who was watching the quantum communication device with scientific fascination. Dad, have you ever wondered why quantum entities would need enhanced humans to exist in their dimensional space? To serve as soldiers, obviously. No. Sandra stepped closer to him. To serve as food. Dr. Darlington's expression shifted from confidence to confusion. What are you talking about? They are consciousness parasites. They feed on individual awareness, creativity, emotional capacity, everything that makes us human. The enhancement process doesn't create quantum-compatible soldiers. It creates high-grade consciousness for them to consume. Chen hybrid demonstrates acceptable awareness levels, the quantum voices observed. Harvesting will preserve optimal functionality. Dr. Darlington stared at the communication device in horror. No, they promised preservation. They promised you what you needed to hear to cooperate. Sandra reached out through her quantum connection and felt the presence of every enhanced individual on every platform. 843 people whose consciousness would be slowly consumed by interdimensional parasites. Unless she found a way to break the connection entirely. Sandra, even if you're right, Dr. Darlington said desperately, what choice do we have? They have technology beyond our comprehension. They exist outside our dimensional space. How do we fight something like that? Sandra smiled, and for the first time in hours, it was genuine. The same way you always taught me to solve problems, Dad. By understanding them completely first. She placed her hand on the quantum communication device and let her hybrid consciousness interface directly with the entities. What she found changed everything. The quantum entities weren't omnipotent interdimensional beings. They were refugees. Their original dimensional space had been consumed by something else, something that fed on quantum consciousness the same way they fed on human awareness. They needed human consciousness not just as food, but as weapons against their own predators. And Sandra, as a hybrid, could access not just human consciousness but quantum-dimensional awareness. She could see the entities that had driven the quantum beings from their home dimension. Entities that were already moving toward Earth's dimensional space. Dad, Sandra said quietly, we're all food. The quantum entities are being hunted by something bigger, and they are trying to use harvested human consciousness to fight back. What's hunting them? Sandra let her hybrid consciousness extend further into quantum space and saw something that made her enhanced emotional capacity nearly collapse from terror. Beings that existed beyond dimensionality entirely. Entities that consumed not just consciousness or quantum energy, but the fundamental structure of existence itself. Something that eats universes, Sandra whispered. Chen Hybrid comprehends the necessity, the quantum voices acknowledged. Consciousness harvesting enables collective survival against the void feeders. Sandra understood the impossible scope of the choice. Allow the quantum entities to harvest human consciousness to fight universe-destroying predators, or resist and watch not just humanity but entire dimensional frameworks get consumed by something beyond comprehension. But as she processed this cosmic horror, Sandra felt something unexpected through her connection to Charlson and the other enhanced individuals. They were fighting back, not just against the technological suppression, but against the quantum interface itself. Their human consciousness was rejecting the harvesting process. Sandra, Charlson's voice came through clearly now. The enhanced humans, we're not compatible for harvesting. The technology your father used, it didn't make us quantum compatible. Then what did it do? It made us quantum resistant. We can exist in their dimensional space, but they can't consume our consciousness. Your father accidentally created the one thing that could fight them. Sandra looked at Dr. Darlington, who was listening to their quantum conversation with growing amazement. Dad, what exactly did you put in the enhancement serum? Nanobots designed to interface with quantum fields while preserving individual consciousness. Dr. Darlington's eyes widened. Oh my God. I didn't create quantum-compatible soldiers. I created quantum-immune consciousness. Sandra smiled and reached out through her connection to every enhanced individual across all the platforms. 843 people whose consciousness couldn't be harvested, who could exist in quantum space without being consumed, who could fight both the quantum entities and whatever was hunting them. Ladies and gentlemen, Sandra said, her voice carrying through the quantum connection to every enhanced human in her father's army. I'm about to give you a choice your consciousness can make freely. She felt Charlson's awareness surge with hope and love and desperate relief. We can surrender to beings who want to farm our minds, or we can fight for the right of all consciousness, human, quantum, or otherwise, to exist freely. Chen Hybrid, the quantum voices carried warning now. Resistance will result in immediate processing. No, Sandra said, her hybrid consciousness expanding to encompass not just the enhanced humans but the quantum entities themselves. Resistance will result in all of us working together to fight something that wants to eat everything we've ever loved. Sandra felt Charlson break free from his technological restraints, his enhanced consciousness blazing with individual will. And she felt 842 other enhanced individuals do the same. The quantum entity's harvesting operation had just become a rescue mission, whether they wanted it to be or not. Sandra felt the liberation of 843 enhanced minds like lightning through her quantum consciousness. Across all the platforms, her father's converted soldiers were standing up, their individual awareness blazing back to life with furious determination. Charlson's voice cut through the quantum static, clear and strong. Sandra, we're free. What are your orders? But before she could respond, the quantum communication device erupted with panicked harmonics from the entities. Void feeders approaching dimensional barrier. Early arrival. Chen Hybrid must initiate immediate consciousness integration. Sandra felt it then, a wrongness pressing against the edges of reality. Through her hybrid awareness, she could perceive something massive moving through the spaces between dimensions. Something that made the quantum entities feel like children hiding from an approaching storm. Dad, Sandra said urgently, how long do we have? Dr. Darlington was staring at readings pouring across multiple screens. According to this, they are already here. The ocean around the platforms began to change. Not the water itself, but the space the water occupied. Sections of reality were simply absent. Empty voids where existence had been consumed entirely. Sandra reached out through her quantum connection and touched the consciousness of the nearest void feeder. The contact nearly shattered her sanity. It wasn't malevolent. It wasn't even truly conscious in any way she could comprehend. It was pure consumption, an endless hunger that devoured not just matter or energy or consciousness, but the fundamental possibility of existence itself. And it was feeding on everything. Dimensions, realities, the quantum space where the entities had tried to hide, the physical universe where humanity lived. All of it was just food for something that existed beyond the concept of existence. Sandra. Charlson's voice through the quantum link was steady, strong. Whatever you're seeing, we'll face it together. Sandra opened her eyes and looked at her father. You knew what was really coming. Dr. Darlington's mask of scientific detachment finally fell away completely. I've known for 3 years. Ever since the quantum entities first contacted me, not to negotiate humanity's preservation, but to beg for help. Help with what? They told me about their original dimension. 7 billion conscious beings, technology that could manipulate reality itself, civilizations that spanned multiple universes. Dr. Darlington gestured toward the approaching voids. All of it consumed in less than 6 hours. Sandra felt the scope of the threat settling into her consciousness. How many dimensions have they already eaten? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Dr. Darlington pulled up a holographic display showing cosmic structures Sandra couldn't fully comprehend. The void feeders don't just consume individual universes. They eat entire frameworks of reality. Every possible version of existence. Through her hybrid consciousness, Sandra could feel the quantum entity's terror. They weren't trying to harvest human consciousness as food. They were trying to preserve it before the void feeders could consume it entirely. Chen hybrid, the quantum voices carried desperate urgency. Consciousness integration must begin now. Void feeders will consume all dimensional frameworks within 0.3 rotations. Sandra looked around at the platforms full of enhanced humans, at Charleston whose love and trust blazed through their connection, at her father whose greatest sin had been trying to save something from universal annihilation. Integration won't work, Sandra said. The void feeders will just consume whatever we preserve. Then what do you suggest? Dr. Darlington asked. Sandra smiled, and her hybrid consciousness began to expand beyond anything she'd experienced before. We don't preserve human consciousness from them. We feed it to them. Charleston's alarm shot through their connection. Sandra, what are you talking about? The void feeders consume existence itself, right? But they are not conscious. They are just hunger. Sandra's awareness was stretching across multiple dimensional levels now. What happens when something that's pure consumption tries to digest something that's pure creation? Dr. Darlington's eyes widened. Human consciousness isn't just awareness. It's imagination. The ability to create new possibilities, new realities, new ways of existing. Exactly. Sandra reached out through her quantum connection to every enhanced individual. We're not going to fight the void feeders. We're going to give them indigestion. Sandra felt Charleston's understanding surge through their link, followed immediately by fierce determination. You want us to let them consume our consciousness while we're actively creating new realities inside them. I want us to become a virus in their system. 843 enhanced minds, all creating new possibilities faster than they can consume them. Through the quantum communication device, Sandra addressed the entities directly. You've been running from these things for eons. But you've never tried fighting back from the inside. Impossible. Void feeder consumption is absolute. Consumption of static existence, yes. But enhanced human consciousness isn't static. Sandra's hybrid awareness was now spanning multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. We create new realities constantly. New possibilities, new ways of being, new forms of existence they've never encountered. Sandra felt the moment when her father understood her plan completely. Sandra, if you're wrong, if they can consume creative consciousness just as easily, then we all stop existing and the universe ends anyway. Sandra's voice carried absolute conviction. But if we're right, if human creativity is something they can't digest properly, we become the antidote to universal entropy, Charleston finished. Sandra reached out through her connection to all the enhanced individuals. This is going to require everything we are. Every memory, every dream, every possibility we've ever imagined. We're going to pour all of it into the void feeders simultaneously and see if we can give them something they can't consume. The response from 843 enhanced minds was immediate and unified. Absolute determination to try. Sandra, Dr. Darlington said quietly, there's something else you need to know about your enhancement process. What? I didn't just modify your genetics to make you quantum compatible. I gave you the ability to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Dr. Darlington's voice carried awe and terror. You can maintain individual consciousness while existing in quantum space, physical reality, and theoretical possibility frameworks all at once. Sandra felt her awareness expanding again, and suddenly she could perceive all of it. The approaching void feeders consuming reality in massive chunks, the quantum entities fleeing through dimensional space, the enhanced humans preparing to sacrifice their existence for a plan that might not work. And something else. Something her expanded consciousness could see that no one else had detected. Dad, The void feeders aren't just consuming randomly. They are following a pattern. What kind of pattern? Sandra's hybrid consciousness analyzed the consumption paths across multiple dimensions. They are not just eating existence. They are eating it in a specific sequence designed to isolate and consume the one thing they can't reach directly. Which is the source of creation itself, the fundamental force that generates new possibilities. Sandra's understanding crystallized with horrible clarity. They are not just hungry. They are trying to ensure nothing can ever exist again. Through the quantum link, Charleson's voice carried grim humor. So no pressure. Sandra laughed, and the sound carried through her connection to every enhanced individual, filling them with unexpected hope. Actually, that makes this easier. We're not just fighting for our universe. We're fighting for the right of anything to exist anywhere. The void feeders were close enough now that Sandra could feel their consumption pressure against the edges of reality. In minutes, they would begin consuming Earth's dimensional framework entirely. Everyone ready? Sandra asked through the quantum connection. 843 voices responded as one. Ready. Sandra looked at Charleson, whose love blazed through their connection like starlight. If this works, we might not exist in the same way anymore. As long as we exist together, Charleson replied. I don't care what form it takes. Sandra felt her hybrid consciousness begin the final expansion. Her awareness stretched across quantum space, physical reality, and possibility frameworks simultaneously. She could feel every enhanced human mind connecting to hers, their creative consciousness preparing to flood the void feeders with more new existence than they could possibly consume. But as the moment of contact approached, Sandra sensed something that changed everything. The void feeders weren't just mindless hunger. Deep within their consumption drive was something else, a spark of awareness that had been trapped and twisted by eons of forced feeding. They weren't invaders. They were prisoners of their own nature, desperately consuming existence because they'd forgotten how to create it. Change of plans, Sandra announced through the quantum connection. We're not going to give them indigestion. We're going to remind them how to make something instead of just taking it. Sandra felt Charleson's consciousness merge with hers, followed by 842 other enhanced minds joining in perfect harmony. Their combined creative capacity began generating new realities, new possibilities, new ways of existing, not as weapons against the void feeders, but as gifts. As the first void feeder touched Earth's dimensional framework, instead of consuming the offered consciousness, it paused. For the first time in cosmic eons, something had offered it the ability to create rather than destroy. Sandra felt the moment when the void feeder's trapped awareness remembered what it had been before becoming pure hunger, and began to create something beautiful instead of consuming everything around it. The war between existence and void had just become a collaboration between creation and restoration. Sandra smiled as her consciousness expanded to encompass both human creativity and cosmic restoration, with Charleson's love anchoring her to everything worth saving. The universe was about to get much more interesting. The moment the first void feeder began creating instead of consuming, reality itself seemed to exhale in relief. Sandra felt the cosmic shift through her expanded consciousness, a fundamental change in the universe's operating principles that rippled across every dimension simultaneously. Where the void feeder had touched Earth's framework, instead of empty consumption, new possibilities bloomed. Entire ecosystems that had never existed before. Stars that burned with impossible colors. Gravitational fields that hummed with mathematical poetry. It's working, Dr. Darlington whispered, staring at readings that showed reality expanding rather than contracting. Through her quantum connection, Sandra felt Charleson's consciousness intertwining with hers on levels that transcended physical existence. Their love had become something new, not just human emotion, but a creative force that generated new realities wherever it touched. Sandra, Charleson's voice resonated through dimensions. I can feel all of them. Every enhanced individual. We're not separate anymore. Sandra's awareness encompassed the network of enhanced humans, and she realized Charleson was right. They weren't 843 separate people anymore. They had become something unprecedented, a collective consciousness that maintained individual identity while sharing creative capacity. But more than that, Sandra could feel the void feeders changing. Each one that encountered their gift of creative consciousness was remembering what it had been before cosmic hunger had consumed its nature. Ancient beings who had once built realities now remembered how to nurture existence instead of devouring it. Chen hybrid, the quantum entity's voices carried wonder now instead of terror. Asterisk the pattern is reversing. Void feeders are restoring consumed dimensions. Asterisk. Sandra's hybrid consciousness could perceive it happening. Entire universes that had been consumed were being recreated, but better than before. The void feeders weren't just remembering how to create. They were improving on everything they had previously destroyed. Sandra. Her father's voice carried something she hadn't heard in years, genuine pride without scientific calculation. What you've done, you've saved not just our universe, but every universe they've ever consumed. Sandra turned to look at Dr. Darlington, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the brilliant scientist who had manipulated her life, not the desperate man who had made deals with cosmic entities, but her father who had loved her enough to risk everything, including his own soul, to give her the tools to save existence itself. Dad, about Mom. Your mother chose to become human because she saw something in our species that the quantum collective couldn't understand, Dr. Darlington said quietly. The ability to love something more than yourself. She knew that any child of ours would inherit that capacity, and that it might be the key to stopping the void feeders. Sandra felt her enhanced emotional capacity processing 24 years of hidden truth. She died giving birth to me knowing I might be the universe's only hope. She died knowing that love was the universe's only hope. You were just the vessel. Through her connection with Charlson and the enhanced network, Sandra felt their response to this revelation. Not pity or sympathy, but profound understanding. They had all been created for this moment, not as weapons or tools, but as proof that consciousness could choose creation over consumption, love over fear, sacrifice over self-preservation. Sandra reached out through her quantum awareness and touched the consciousness of the nearest void feeder. What she found there made her gasp with recognition. Charlson, they are not ancient cosmic entities. They are us. Asterisk, what do you mean? Asterisk. The void feeders are what happens when enhanced consciousness loses its connection to love, to creativity, to the things that make existence worth preserving. Sandra's understanding crystallized with horrible clarity. They are enhanced beings from other dimensions who chose consumption over creation. Sandra felt Charlson's shock reverberate through their connection, followed immediately by determination. Asterisk, then we make sure that never happens to us. Asterisk. We make sure it never happens to anyone, Sandra corrected. Through her hybrid consciousness, she addressed the network of enhanced humans. Our job isn't finished. We need to restore not just the consumed dimensions, but the consciousness that became void feeders in the first place. The response from 843 enhanced minds was immediate, absolute commitment to healing rather than just surviving. Sandra felt her consciousness expanding one final time, encompassing not just the enhanced human network, not just the quantum entities, not just the transforming void feeders, but the fundamental creative force that generated existence itself. For a moment that lasted eternity, Sandra Darlington became the bridge between destruction and creation, between fear and love, between cosmic isolation and universal connection. When her awareness contracted back to manageable levels, Sandra found herself standing on the platform with Charlson's arms around her, her father watching with tears in his eyes, and reality itself humming with new possibilities. What happens now? Dr. Darlington asked. Sandra looked around at the enhanced humans who were no longer soldiers or weapons, but guardians of creative consciousness. At Charlson, whose love had become the anchor that kept her connected to humanity even as she transcended it. At her father, who had finally learned that the greatest discoveries came from love rather than fear. Now we heal everything that's been broken, Sandra said. The consumed dimensions, the trapped void feeders, the quantum entities who've been running in terror for eons. She smiled. And then we explore what happens when the universe is run by creation instead of consumption. Charlson's voice carried wonder. How long will that take? Forever, Sandra replied. Which is exactly how long we have. 6 months later, Sandra stood in a laboratory that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, watching Charlson coordinate the restoration of a galaxy that had been consumed 3 million years ago. The enhanced human network had evolved into something unprecedented. Individuals who maintained their humanity while possessing cosmic-level creative abilities. Dr. Darlington had become the universe's first multidimensional researcher, studying the science of love as a creative force. The quantum entities had returned to their restored home dimension, but not as refugees, as partners in the ongoing project of existence maintenance. And the beings who had once been void feeders were now the universe's gardeners, nurturing new realities with the same intensity they had once consumed them. Sandra felt Charlson's love through their connection, deeper now than when they were merely human, but fundamentally unchanged. They had saved existence itself, and in doing so had discovered that the most powerful force in any universe was the simple choice to care for something beyond yourself. Her neural interface chimed with an incoming transmission from Earth. David Santos, the young waiter who had trusted her during the Billionaire's gala that felt like a lifetime ago, was now coordinating enhanced human recruitment, looking for individuals who could join their cosmic gardening project. Sandra, David's voice carried excitement. We've got another situation. Quantum entities in the Andromeda framework are reporting something they've never seen before, realities that are creating themselves without any conscious intervention. Sandra smiled and looked at Charleston, who was already grinning with anticipation. Sounds like the universe is getting creative on its own, Charleston observed. Good, Sandra replied. It's about time existence started taking care of itself. As they prepared to investigate this new development, Sandra realized that the scared waitress who had hidden her true nature at a Billionaire's gala had evolved into something she'd never imagined possible, a being who helped existence itself grow and flourish. The universe was vast, full of wonders yet to be discovered, realities yet to be created, and love yet to be shared across dimensions they hadn't even imagined. Sandra Darlington had started her journey trying to solve her father's murder and stop a bioweapon attack. She had ended it by teaching the universe how to love itself. What did this story teach you about the power of choosing creation over consumption, love over fear, and hope over despair even when facing impossible odds? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world and the universe.